Bruins Beat is brought to you by Prizepicks.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat, presented by Prizepicks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That's Court Lalonde. Court, what is up?
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah,
It's been a minute.
I'm glad to be back. I'm
happy we're doing this. Last time we had you on, I was like, this will be like 25 minutes or so. And then we went an hour.
Yes.
And then we sat on here after we stopped recording. We talked for another hour. So maybe we'll do the same thing today.
Let's see.
But there's been a lot that's happened.
Yes, just a couple things. I think this is the season of drama. I think that's the best way to describe it.
This was it's funny, like the Red Sox had a camera crew follow them for a Netflix documentary last year. And the Red Sox were very boring last year. There wasn't a lot going on. They were very middle of the pack. I think that Netflix crew should have actually just been following this year's Bruins, because I think there is so much you can get from this team. I mean, you think back to you had the Montgomery stuff, you had the Swayman stuff at the beginning of the year, then you have sort of some of the Marchand Patrnak rumor drama a couple months ago, and then you obviously have the deadline, and there's just so much, and the struggles in general with this team. We'll start with last night's game, and then we'll zoom out, because that's obviously the most relevant thing. Bruins going to Ottawa on a heater, at least a 2-game win streak. Looked pretty good.
Are we calling a 2-game win streak now a heater?
That's this season, Court. That's this season.
Okay. Right.
Go to Ottawa, and Swayman gives up 4 in the first. And suddenly you're behind. They try to fight back a little bit. Lohrei got robbed on that Ullmark save. Holy crap. Jumps across, makes an incredible glove save. That must have felt
twice. He got robbed on that second. He did. Another time, like another volley.
He did. Ullmark just probably can't even fathom letting in a Mason Lohrei goal. Bruins lose in Ottawa 6-3.
Against a team that is actually on a heater.
That's a real heater. And they don't lose at home either. So
they're making the playoffs.
They look good. And I will say this, Court, watching their power play, it's like, holy crap.
It's a power play.
Yeah.
Also watching their defensemen not cave in on their goaltender and screen them every 2 seconds. Like everybody was like, oh, the Ullmark save, but watch the replay. The defense of giving him space. They're communicating. You can actually they are telling him, hey, guys behind that, they were playing like a hockey team. It was impressive.
I also, again, they just have a good amount of skill. They have a lot of talented guys. I mean, they've rebuilt for a while, which is why I would say to Bruins fans, I don't know if you really want to go through all of
2016 after their last playoff run, right?
It was, because was it 17?
Yeah, Bruce's first year. They beat him in the first round with McAvoy. That's 2016. And then they trade Carlson that summer.
Yes, they traded him to San Jose, correct? Yeah. Well, no, remember first? They went out and got Matt Duchene.
Yes, correct. And then they had the cabbie thing where they got caught being losers, and then they traded everybody. And Hoffman was sending death threats. Hoffman's girlfriend was sending death threats to Carlson. They had their own drama. They had a season of drama.
And then that led to a rebuild that lasted 7 years.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the 17-18 season when that all went down.
Yes,
and the year before was when they had that magical run that they almost went to the cup in. And they, at that time, I remember thinking, they have a real core. Hoffman and Carlson and Stone was there, and Craig Anderson was playing really well. And I was like, all right, that's a team. And then it fell apart. And again, it was a long rebuild. So I'm not saying that, hey, the Bruins need to do that, because I don't think this city and this fan base would really vibe or jive with that.
Jacobs wouldn't like that.
What was that?
The Jacobs wouldn't like that.
No, God, no. But they have a lot of talent. And I agree with you. I think they're definitely a playoff team. But Bruins go in there and lose. Obviously, Hustentinov looked good. I think he's looked really good in his 2 games.
Lots of speed. I really like that guy. Did you see he was a captain in every team he's been on except Minnesota?
I did. And I think I don't know a ton about his game. I'm not like a Spoke Z who knows every single little thing about his game, so I can't speak like that. But I can say from the 3 games I've seen him play in, I think you have something there. I'm not saying he's going to be your next Marchand, but
second line winger. I think he can be that guy.
Yeah, he has skill, good shot,
fast. That breakaway speed that he pulled away last night. I was like, yeah. Because the Bruins have been very slow this year.
So slow.
And they make all these trades and everybody's still expecting the best. But I'll take the goodness that we saw from that Ottawa game last night and the last 3 games that we've seen. We saw guys break away and have speed. We've seen Casey Middlestat being given the reins to play his game and be better. I'm not saying he's going to be the next greatest center that we've had here in Boston, but he's looked good in the 3-game sample we've seen, and Hustadinov has looked great too. So 2 out of the guys we got have looked good. I'll take that as a win.
I agree with you. And I think, when we look back at that deadline, obviously Connor and I have talked a lot about it, and it's like, you got younger, you got faster, you got more skilled, and you see that with Mittelstadt, especially on the power play too. His zone entries, he doesn't just bomb ahead. Even in the offensive zone, just his small area passes. Like, I like what I see from him, and he's someone like, I think a lot of people are like, oh, he's kind of a bust of a first-round pick. To me, it's essentially what you got with Zacha. Like, and he, I think, even has a higher value because he's had better seasons than Zacha had prior to coming to Boston.
Or Dylan Strome in Washington.
That's another great one. Like, I these skilled centers, and Mittelstadt isn't a typical Bruin. Nope. I think we can all agree he's not, a typical Bruin, but I think that's kind of why they wanted him, right?
I think the signings and everything that happened over the offseason were more one side of management. And I think these trades and the returns feel a lot like Evan Gold and another side of management. That's what I'm going to say, because they changed direction. This summer, they got big, slow, and tough. And Bruins fans...
Who does that sound like?
Sounds like a guy who hurt his knee. But Bruins fans lined up around the corner saying, Big Bad Bruins are back. This is going to be great. Well, they got caved in every game to start the season. They were slow. They had their president of hockey operations publicly call out their goaltender in public over and over again and made it more of a spectacle than it already was. And that is hard the players are going to be on the players' side. So there's going to be a little bit of hostility. As much as Marchand said what he said, he says all the right things all the time in an interview. I'm not saying he's lying. I'm just saying there had to have been some hostility from the players to management because of all that. So you have that over your head at the beginning of the year. And then you're slow, and every team is out skating you night after night after night. They're getting outshot. Everything is happening in the bad way. They're getting caved in. They can't do anything. They have no zone entries, and their power play has been terrible all year. Hasn't just had like hot and cold. It's been all year. And then what do they do at the trade deadline? They brought in all skill guys.
Skill guys, and bolstered the prospect pool and got more picks. And I would assume they're going to go a similar direction with those picks. And it's funny because I remember like when the Bruins were coached by Cassidy, Bruce's thing was always, we want to beat him on the scoreboard.
Yep.
Like, and they'd get pushed around a little bit, but they would typically win. And they were especially winning in the regular season.
And be strong in the corners.
Yes.
Be strong on your forecheck, strong on your back check, and goals will happen.
Yes. And this team obviously didn't have it. So it has been refreshing over the last week that you are seeing a team that can play with pace. You're not seeing a team, is Vinny Lettieri going to be part of this team's plans going forward? No, probably not, right? But there's a little more speed there. And there's more speed with a lot of these guys. Hustadinov, I think, is part of your future plans, and he's shown that.
I went down on eBay and I bought a bunch of his rookie cards because I was like, I'm going all in on this guy. I think
I like that.
He looks a lot like. So I watch a lot of Vegas games, as you know, and he reminds me a lot of what I saw from Pavel Dorofeyev last year. And it's only been a 3-game sample, so I want to see more from him. But the speed, the breakaway speed of being able to take guys, like he pushed off, and he did it a couple times where he separated himself so quick. And then once he got that little burst, he was gone.
He's got speed. He's a good skater, good skater. And the other thing, Court, and I don't know what it is, but ever since the deadline with these new players and kind of this new direction, they've been more interesting to watch. And I don't know if that's the shiny new toy thing. And in a couple weeks, we're like, oh my God, they've lost 10 in a row or something. We're like, all right, well, never mind anymore. But I don't think that's going to happen. But I also think they're going in a new direction, and a lot of the guys they dealt out, Marchand excluded, but Coyle, Carlo, Brazeau, Frederick, they were great players here, especially Coyle and Carlo, like really good Bruins, longtime guys who probably should have had cups, probably deserved one in 2019, but it was time. Yep. It was time, and you're seeing a different vibe shift with this team, and you're seeing Patrnak stepping up into more of a leadership role.
His interview that other night was unreal. Like I literally just did I was like, so good. Like, he's the next captain. Let's be honest.
I think he's working. I think he's worked his way into it. And I
100%.
think over especially these last couple weeks of the season after this, I think if this continues, I don't know how you don't give him the captain.
I think he's done it all year. And I talked about it. I was like, he used to be the party boy, right?
Yep.
Like, we've talked about this on and off the air. Like, he was the party boy. And if you asked me last year, I would have been like, oh, it's McAvoy. And now what I've seen from Pastrnak, how he dealt with the Marchand situation, that, the false rumors, how he's dealt with the Swayman situation, even when he talked about that, every time he's had a chance to be the face of the team, he's excelled. And he has literally kept them on. He's had them on his back all season. He scored again last night. Like, all he has been amazing just all year.
I think he deserves Hart Trophy votes. I'm not saying he should win it.
I 100% agree with you.
But given the circumstances, absolutely give him some Hart Trophy votes. I couldn't agree more. Then you have the Swayman stuff, and the stats of him in a third straight start have not been great this season.
Terrible.
That first goal was inexcusable. And again, the goal, the D backed up into him, so there was that. But again,
he's got to get used to this by now. Like,
he's got to make that save.
Or if he's not communicating with the defense by now and having a conversation of like, hey, we need to talk out there, because I also noticed on the Korpisalo goal that defense are supposed to talk to their goalie.
Correct.
But goalie's also supposed to talk to the defender. So if they're backing into Swayman, why isn't he telling them to get the hell out of there? Because they're literally backing into him.
Yep. Yeah, and what's interesting to me is I was actually watching the recent Behind the B, and they mic'd up Jay Leach, and this was in the Nashville game. And one of the things he mentioned to his Ds, like, you guys are real quiet out there. Like, we need to communicate. And I think that's been a problem all year, where those guys don't talk. And I also think obviously, yes, they're without McAvoy, they're without Lindholm.
Hampus is a loud guy. You always hear him on the mics.
Yes, and Carlo obviously is gone now. So talent-wise, you've regressed on D. We understand that. It was really apparent last night. Ottawa's forecheck was giving them hell.
Yeah.
Hell. And like Wotherspoon had a really bad first period, but Swayman, these numbers aren't great. This is from Ty Anderson, so I got to give Ty some credit here. Swayman came into play with 3 wins and an .888 save percentage in 11 games this season in a third straight start. That 4-goal period dropped it down to an .882 save percentage. So, I mean, there is the argument like, all right, you should have started Korpisalo, whatever. Obviously, Korpisalo looked a lot better when he came in.
And Korpisalo has played better against Ottawa this year and throughout his career. And honestly, the continuation of rolling him out for his third start, I think, will be Sacco's downfall.
It is definitely going to be one of them. I think that's been a recurring problem.
Yeah, like, we all thought Korpisalo should have got this start. And then when they even picked Swayman, I'm like, he just went through the gauntlet of Florida and Tampa.
I know.
Give the guy a night off.
But I will also say I do understand that from their perspective of this is your number one goalie.
I get it, but it feels stubborn.
Must-win game.
They've spent years and years of perfecting the tandem.
I know.
Perfecting it. They started with Khudobin and Tuukka Rask, and they've been doing it for years. And then management gets a bee in their bonnet because Swayman puts his chest out and fights back, because the years of the team-friendly deals go to bite you in the butt. And look at Marchand as a prime example. Give team-friendly deals, they don't give it to you in the end. It is what it is. Team-friendly deals are stupid for players. I'm sorry. I'm always going to be pro player. I never take a team-friendly deal. Sorry, fans.
I agree.
It's dumb. But Swayman fought for his money, and like he should. But I almost feel like it's a stubbornness of like, put him back in, because goalie Bob would have saw that and said, I don't think you should start him, man.
Well, that's what the trends and that's what the stats would say, right? Like, why would you put him back in? And they think there's this other. You're right. They have perfected the art of the goalie tandem. I mean, it was obviously at its height the last 2 or 3 years, but even before that, Halak and Ryan, like, it worked.
And they just stopped doing it.
What I do wonder, though, is should we be concerned about Swayman not being able to start 3 games in a row and be really good in that, especially come the playoffs?
100%. But the worst part is we've seen him in the playoffs. We know what he can do there.
I know.
We're not making it. Sorry, Bruins. They're not making the playoffs.
No.
I'm team tank this year. Just tank and get in the top 6. Top 6 is great this year. The rest of that is just a crapshoot, but the top 6 is great. So just get into the top 6 and you're going to be fantastic. It is what it is. Yes and no. I have 2 things on it. Swayman was not good last night. I say 2 out of the 4 were brutal. Yep. Absolutely brutal. Should have had them. Just it is what it is at this point. But it's worse that we all saw him going into the net and we're like,
I know.
And you have a coach who's made this decision over and over and over again. You want to make the playoffs, and I get it. You should want him. He's getting paid, but by the time the cap goes up next year, his salary actually is nothing. The average salary in the next 3 years is going to be close to $6 million a year. So whatever. But he shouldn't have started. He needs to play 3 in a row because if that's what you want for the playoffs, but I'm not worried about him in the playoffs. I'm worried about, I just think his season started terrible. And this is what I think the Bruins philosophy is. They're going to let him play next year. If he has another terrible year, then they go from there. But they're acting like, you know what? This one is in the past. We're moving on. What happens, happens. But if that's your take, and that's kind of what Sweeney said in that press conference, then Hudobin should have started last night. And you've got to, Korpisalo, sorry. Jesus.
Hudobin should have started last night.
Yeah, that'd be nice. But they need to learn from their mistakes, and they've continued to make them over and over and over again. And hearing Swayman in interviews, he's a very mentally charged person. That's the way he thinks and everything. So if his brain is already telling him going into it, if he's thinking the same thing we all are, he is thinking that. He's thinking, I'm terrible going into this third game. And he was. So
yeah,
just give him the night off. The amount of times that Sacco keeps throwing him into the lion's den is confusing the living daylights out of me this year. Like, you have Korpisalo going almost a month between starts is the dumbest thing ever.
And Korpisalo's been good.
Yeah. That goal like a score was terrible, but still, that's fine.
Oh, yeah. Yes, yeah.
He's also good because we don't see him as much. So we're like, that one game last month, he was great.
Yeah.
He hasn't really been that good, but
he's been all right.
Again, he's been all right. Neither goalie's been good.
I think what you're hitting on is correct with Swayman. And I think there's a lot of guys going into next season. The next season's big for, right? Like the 2 free agent acquisitions from last year, Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov. Big next year. Are you going to get any, are you going to get some more value out of those guys? I'm not going to say they're going to live up to the contracts because I think it's pretty clear they probably aren't. Elias Lindholm, I continue to look at and go, oh man, like, they have him on the third line.
They have him on wings sometimes. He's your best faceoff man. Whatever at this point.
I also he doesn't elevate guys around him.
Nope.
I get that. That really nerves me up that's also been prevalent this year. And then Zadorov, has some nice things and like the Bennett fight.
He's making 5 though. Is no big deal. Like, honestly, he's only $5 million a year. Who cares?
I know, but they brought, that again, I always look at that money could have gone towards a scoring wing. That money could have gone towards a scoring wing.
But that is not the way they've done things in the past. They had Tyler Toffoli for every year. They could have brought in a guy like that, and he's the perfect guy. I am very curious this offseason. Do they take a swing at Brock Besser? Because in the past, they wouldn't have. They almost traded him for him once during the pandemic, right before the pandemic. He's a scoring winger, and that's what he is. Usually the Bruins don't go for them. Usually they would go for Brock Nelson. That's what the Bruins will go for.
You're right.
But I'm really hoping they go for Brock Besser because they need help scoring goals.
And they need help on the wings. I've said
100%.
this all season. After Patrnak, and now with Marchand gone, there's no depth on the wings. They will have the cap space to do this stuff, though. That's the thing. Like, they will have cap space to complete these things if they want to do them. But I think next season's huge for Swayman. That's big.
Agreed.
Getting off on the right foot, a good training camp. He'll have a full training camp, going in fully healthy, all that stuff. That's huge. That's going to be huge next year. And you get Hampus Lindholm and all those guys. But Swayman is the biggest because you hear fans over and over say, this is a waste of money. Why did they sign him? Why didn't they trade him? This and that. And I don't think that's the right way to look at it because it's been 1 year. It's been 1 year, and you look at the start that he had. I am not saying that he's going to live up to that contract fully. We don't know that yet, and what he's shown this year shows that he might not. But we don't know that this year. You have to give him next year where he will have a full training camp and all those things. Am I crazy for thinking that?
I don't think you are at all. And I also think that every single person in this fan base would have gave him the dump truck of money after the playoffs and was like, yeah. If he doesn't go on that podcast with the chicken logo or whatever, every time I think of that podcast, I think of that chicken logo that was in the corner. But
I don't remember their name.
Yeah, neither do I. If he doesn't go on that podcast, we wouldn't be having these conversations. We would be like, oh, he got paid or whatever. But if Sweeney would have just done 2, they had the option of doing 2 years when they walked out of arbitration. The Boston Bruins said, we'll do 1 to give you, we're helping you out. You're going to get your money because we know you're going to be good. Imagine they just done the 2 years. They would have had this second year of this. Maybe he wouldn't have. I still think he would have had a better year if he goes through camp. Like you're saying, he definitely would have had a better year. I think his mindset was gone the whole year. It's gone.
Yeah. And and you have the bad team in front of him. The bad team in front of him.
Bad team is an understatement. The defense has been the worst I have seen since the Joe Thornton days.
Agreed.
Like, they've been brutal.
Terrible.
And people keep going, oh, it's all, I'm like, but they're brutal. Like, so bad. Like, I think it was the Florida game when Husadinov even, he screamed. Like, there's no way Swayman could, everybody's like, oh, Swayman didn't even move. And it was funny because listening to Brick, he's like, oh, Swayman let that one go. And then Raycroft had to come on and be like, so no. I'm going to go with no on that. He's no way he could have seen a damn thing. Because I'm on ice level and I couldn't see anything. So how could he see anything?
And I think that's the thing. And the team hasn't been good in front of him. And first year without Ullmark. First year without the goalie rotation.
Your best friend.
Best friend. And I think that's part of the reason Lauko came back. Lauko and Swayman are tight. Lauko's tight with a lot of guys on that team.
He's a glue guy.
He's
got tons of speed, and he's great in your bottom six. Like when he was like, it was the dumbest. I was just like, I don't understand what you're doing here. I even thought, and I'll still, because I'm still gonna, we're all gonna be writing that article or doing a video on the revisiting the Ullmark trade. Given the return, I would have just let him play out the rest of the season and just lost him for nothing. It is what it is.
You would have?
Because you didn't get the return. They decided that the first round pick was more important than anything else. Agreed. Otherwise, they could have had Jacob Chychrun. Let's be honest. That was the deal. They kept pushing and pushing for that first round pick. They couldn't get it. They could have added more to get Jacob Chychrun in the first. They didn't want to do it. They just wanted to do the Ullmark. So then they moved to Kastelic and the first, and we got Korpisalo. Korpisalo's terrible. I'm going to say it. He's played decent for us, but he's not a good goalie.
And historically in the NHL, he's not been the guy either.
He's just no. It is what it is. So you're bringing in a goalie that you're paying that you could have been paying Swayman this Ullmark the same. It makes no sense now given what happens. It's revisionist history to look at it now. But I would have just been like, let him ride it out if you know you're going to go through this whole Swayman thing because you knew what was happening behind the scenes. Not getting Chychrun still pisses me off.
So you're saying they could have traded Ullmark for Chychrun?
100%.
Okay.
Look at the Chychrun deal.
Yeah.
What did Washington give up that was any different?
Not much.
The Bruins wanted that first round pick. If Chychrun was part of the deal, the first round pick wasn't. That's the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they wanted that first round pick. And hey, great. You got a project in Dean Letourneau. It's great. We'll see how that pans out. You really wanted that first round pick. I get it, but I look at the return now. I love Kastelic. I think he's great. He's great bottom six. But right now they lost that trade. Like,
yeah, I agree. I mean, Ullmark's been great for them. They're in the playoffs, all that stuff. My thing is, I mean, think back to when that deal went down. I think everyone was kind of like, can you run this goalie tandem back again? It didn't work in the playoffs. Again, you never did it in the playoffs. You never really, I mean, they tried it at the very beginning and then went away from it. Swayman was the hotter guy. And they did need a first. That's why I keep going back to that.
Did they though? When they take Dean Letourneau, did they need it?
I mean, I think they need to bolster the prospect pool. Absolutely.
Sure.
I do think that.
But
again,
just did that at the trade deadline.
They did, yes. But I don't think they anticipated that they'd be doing that at this deadline.
They should have.
Well, yes. But I think they thought they were going to be contenders this season.
But they overachieved the season before. All the numbers told everybody in the world they had way too many overtime wins, that they weren't that good of a team. They were lucky to get into the playoffs. If you take away their overtime wins, their overtime losses, that Boston Bruins team last year wasn't good. So
yeah, and you also have the element of defensively, the metrics actually were not great with them last year, and it was the goaltending that continued to bail them out.
100%. And this year, what did they expect was going to change? They went from losing 2 future Hall of Famers and thinking it was going to be the same. And then when they made the playoffs, it was the worst thing could ever happen. Heck, the worst thing could ever happen was winning in the first round against the Leafs.
They almost blew it. They almost blew it.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It was like a perfect storm of terrible things to happen. And I'm sorry people don't want to hear this, but we're in for a world of hurt for the next couple of years. And it is what it is. They're going to be okay, but they're not going to be good. It's just, there's some black days ahead of us. It's just, that's what we're about to see. And winning last year kind of made them think, let's go all in more, when that wasn't the right decision.
And I think you look at what they did, and at the time, again, I thought the Lindholm signing would work.
Same.
I thought it made sense. Like, I thought that would work, and he would step in, and he's not going to be Bergeron, but he'll be a number one center, and he'll be able to produce with Pastrnak and Marchand or whoever and be fine, and hasn't been the case at all. And that's year one. And remember what we used to say back in the summer? Like, I said this a bunch of times, and I imagine other people said it as well. It's like, oh, maybe he'll be a number two center in year 4 of the deal, but by then the cap's up, and $7.9 million or whatever he's making, he'll be fine. Who cares?
Yeah, treat it like Tavares.
Exactly. And that's year one. And he's a third line center. He's not even a second. And that is, to me, when I look at the downfall of this season, obviously a lot's gone wrong. And there's a lot of things you can point to and say, that's why this happened. That's why that happened. Lindholm not working as your number one center, because that was supposed to put everything back into place. Coyle was going to be, your second or third line center. Zacha was going to be on the wing, and it was all just going to kind of fit. And the power play was going to get better. He was going to work in the bumper, and that hasn't happened at all. It hasn't happened at all. And that to me is, what was that?
It killed the year.
Oh yeah, no, it put everything out of place. And I'm not saying it's all his fault. I'm just saying,
no, that's not his. He signed a contract that was offered to him.
And good for him.
That is not his fault. It wasn't him. It wasn't him like Marchand and Pastrnak saying he reminds me of Bergeron because he's a right shot and can play the bumper. That was Pastrnak and Marchand said it.
I know.
Lindholm didn't say it. He wasn't coming into the press and saying, this is me and I'm the next Bergeron. He was just saying, I'm happy to be in Boston. My family loves it here.
Yeah.
But we all did it. We all hyped him up to be this thing that he is.
We all fell into it. And
now we got to look at it. He had Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk on his line when he had his greatness.
Oh, yeah.
2 amazing players. Pastrnak can't do it on his own. And Pastrnak is also a puck possession type guy. He needs to have the puck on his stick. And that's why him and Bergeron worked well, because Bergeron can work off moving the puck and moving the puck up the ice and doing the other things that you don't see him doing that help Pastrnak get space.
Yep.
Lindholm wasn't able to do that.
No.
He wasn't fast enough to keep up with Pastrnak.
I know. And I don't know if that's not changing.
No. And there's no one out there in the UFAs that's going to fix that problem.
No. That's why I love when people say, well, now they have more money. They can go sign guys in free agency.
Who?
And I'm like, who is that going to be? Like, Mitch Marner's not probably playing on the same line as David Pastrnak. Am I insane? Like,
you're not insane. You have 2 the same type of player. Why would they be on the same line? When Marner's with Matthews and when Marner's with Matthews, it never works. It'll work for a couple days and then it stops working. I've watched way too many of their games. I still think the Leafs are more hilarious. They're going to be in a worse position than the Bruins in a couple of years. And it's going to be just the most hilarious thing, because Marner ain't coming back now after they tried to trade him twice now. He ain't coming back. And then they keep Matthews, who is a glorified Brett Hall, which is just, he is what it is, and was an embarrassment in the Four Nations. I was say it.
Did really not do
absolute embarrassment, just like he has been in the playoffs every year. He is absolutely not a guy that steps up. But looking at the Bruins, what are your options? Brock Nelson? He's not a difference maker. He's a second line center.
I agree.
He's not the guy, but that's who everybody's going to be like, go out and sign him. That's why I looked at this list and I was like, go out and sign Brock Besser and no one else. Maybe get some guy, but don't be getting me bottom 6 guys. You got a million of those freaking guys.
Agreed.
Please do not sign anymore for the bottom 6. Sign Brock Besser and sign Jacob Chikrin. Bring in those 2 guys. You got a puck-moving defenseman that has a pretty good shot, who you should have got in the damn first place. And then you got Brock Besser, who is way better than Jake DeBrusk ever was and can score goals from the slot and will help your power play. And then 100%. You're going to win a little bit more games. You're not going to probably make the playoffs, but you're going to win some more games. You're going to be a better team, and then you're going to keep building and building. And hopefully you get a top 6 pick this year.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with what they are looking at is you can't getting a number 1 center in the offseason is going to be really difficult. You're not getting that in free agency. That's a given. You're not getting one in free agency. So you're either going to have to, if you really want a number 1 center, right? If you really want one, you are either going to have to trade a bunch of your assets and picks and try to make something work with another team, which is very hard to do, but you could do it. You do have more picks now. You do have more assets, all that, or you draft one for the future. And I think that's the more likely route, right?
Agreed.
Like we talked about, you get the 6th pick, you get the 7th pick, even the 8th pick. you try to get your guy there. That's where you try to get, and you have 2 second-round picks now, so that is also.
And they've been good with second-round picks.
They
like
have been
amazing with second-round picks.
They've been very good at second-round picks.
And
you know
you've got
Court, you know what I've noticed with first and seconds, because I work with this a lot with prospects and stuff. Like first-round picks are often, I'm not going to say projects because that's an unfair word for all of them, but it's typically bigger guys who it's like, oh man, if they hit, like
yeah, you're gonna be
guy hits. Because after those, like the top 10's the top 10 best players, like no doubt. Like Hagens is I think like 5'11", but that's Hagens. Like it's just a different breed. And Misa and those guys, right? But you get into that 10 to 25-ish range, and I'm not just basing this off Dean Letourneau. It's a lot of these guys are bigger, or they have something that they have one piece that's very projectable, that's or not projectable, and it's like if that guy hits because he's huge or he's fast, or there's one little thing, it's like, oh wow, he's going to be nasty. The second rounders are often guys who might not be these like other all-worldly talents, but guys that you can be like, yeah, they're going to be a long-time NHL player. Like they are going to be someone in this league for a long time. Maybe not a star, but guys like that. And you also have guys like Lohrei who are really talented, but are like, oh, do we really want to pick this guy here? Maybe more projects. So that's what I've noticed with second-round picks is they can often be guys that are a little bit more projectable at the NHL level.
I 100% agree. And also Lohrei is great. Please, people, stop bashing this guy.
Agreed.
Like he is playing with absolutely no one back there. He is a puck moving defenseman. He is not a stay at home, block shots. That's not his job. His job is to move the puck up the play, and he's the future quarterback for this power play. Just get off his back. He's amazing, and any team would want to have him. And supposedly they got a ton of calls about him at the deadline, and Bruins were smart not to move him.
Agreed. He's 20. Also, he's 24. He's going to make mistakes. He's going to make mistakes.
God forbid, eh?
By the way, what goal was that team against where he cut in front of his own net and it went in? I forget who the opponent was. It was like a month ago. He does that move all the time and it usually works.
Yeah.
And it usually works. Now you got to figure out when to do it, when not to do it. But his hands, his poise with the puck at the point. Mick asked Zadorov about this the other day, and it was kind of an unclear question, but Zadorov mentioned like how poised Lohrei is with the puck at the point. And Zadorov's 100% right. Like he gets so calm, cool, and collected when the puck gets to him at the blue line. It is incredible. I want to dive more into the future because you mentioned there's dark days ahead. But first, our friends over at Prizepicks. Prizepicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prizepicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long over at Prizepicks. Prizepicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And Prizepicks, they like to put their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Bruins-wise, Patrnak is rolling. Morgan Geeky's looking pretty good. Middlestad's putting up points. So you get any of those guys, I think you got to take more goals or points. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app, use code CLNS, get $50 instantly, and play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, run your game. Run your game over at Prizepicks. So you mentioned the future, Court. I think this is something that everyone's wondering about and caring about, as they should. Dark days. I've gone back and forth on this, right? Like, I don't think they're going to fully rebuild because a true like to the studs rebuild would be Pastrnak and McAvoy and Swayman.
But if they have another bad year and he asks to be moved, then it's happening.
Then that's where. But again, you have all these guys are on no moves and no trades, so you need them.
If they ask to be moved, then they're going to move.
Oh yes, if you get if David Pastrnak says I can't keep doing this,
like a Darlene. Did you hear what Darlene just said in Buffalo?
I saw that.
Yeah,
I saw that.
We're not the Buffalo Sabres people.
No, guys want to be here. Yes. Guys do want to be here, and you do need to win. And that's why I do wonder, Court, if they put these, like Brady Tkachuk is one that everyone talks about.
He's not next year, the year after.
Yes. But I also wonder, if things don't go right in Ottawa for him. Like we talked about Ottawa at the beginning of the show, and they look like they're in a good spot and everything. But if, they just traded Josh Norris, his friend, they've had some questionable stuff up there. I saw that story. I think it was in the Ottawa Citizen. I think it was a fan letter saying like he should lose the captaincy. If things continue to go south up there for him, I do wonder if he requests out. I mean, the Bruins do now have the assets to go get him if they wanted to. I do wonder if that ever happens. I don't know. I think I could see them trying to do something, maybe not with Brady Tkachuk, but with somebody like that.
I think Brady Tkachuk is a pipe dream, is the word I want to use.
Well,
So
yeah,
he is signed until 27-28 at $8.2 million a year. From my perspective on the Canadian side, when all this rumors about Tkachuk to Boston and everybody was saying it, and then all the stuff, I have family that lived in Ottawa, and I was like, hey, what's going on with this? They're like, I don't know, man. Like, this is it's not even a story here, but it seems to be a
I think
story.
everybody wants him down here. That's exactly what it is.
Well, yeah, no, I get, and I totally get why. He was one of the best players for Team USA in the Four Nations.
Oh, by far.
Bar none. If the only way he is going anywhere is if he asks to move.
Yes. Oh, God, yeah. They're not dealing him.
No, not a chance. And Ottawa's about to make the playoffs this year.
I know. That's why
they could be a team that upsets someone in the first round. Unfortunately, Ullmark's playoff record isn't the best, is the word I would like. Actually, it's not good. Sorry, as much as everybody was like, he's great, he actually hasn't been that great this year. He just plays great against the Bruins, but he's played decent. He's played better than Swayman, but he hasn't played that great. But Ottawa, again, they're a better hockey team than us. It's just, it is what it is.
Oh, yeah.
Brady Tkachuk would be amazing. Game changer. Amazing. I just don't think it's ever going to happen.
It would be tough. It would be tough. You would need a perfect storm to happen, similar to what happened to his brother in Calgary. Like, you would need that to all come together, and that doesn't just happen overnight.
Yeah, they would need to say. So what happened in Calgary was you had Johnny Gaudreau left, so then Tkachuk's like, well, then I'm gone. Like, yep. I want out of here because this team's going to suck. He was right. Team is going to suck. So you would need Tim Stützle to be like, I'm done. So a European, the most faithful there are, he's going to be like, I'm done. I want to go. And they would need to be embarrassed in the first round of the playoffs this year.
Yes. I agree. That's what you would need. And that's a hard thing to do. So what do you think happens with the Bruins over the next couple of years? What's your forecast, Cyan?
My forecast is, I don't care what Jacob said with his vote of confidence. They are going to evaluate Cam Neely's position and Don Sweeney's position. You don't hire Zdeno Chara to work with the players and work with the front office if you're not thinking about the future. That was my
first thought when that happened too, Court.
I have been looking into that hire so much, and I can't get anything. The amount of crickets I'm getting out of the hiring of Zdeno Chara is pretty impressive. I look at a guy like Thornton over in Florida, who could be easily come into Boston. Marchand mentioned him. So much respect for the guy. He said, coming to Florida was easy. You got Thornton here. I think they're going to look at that. So I think the future for Don Sweeney and Cam Neely isn't long. I think if you're going to start new again and go young and go forward, both of them need to go. It's unfortunate. It is. Their fingerprints are all over some of the terrible decisions that have been made over the years and the trades that they've made, and, to get big and do it's just been weird decision after weird decision sometimes. I think that they will start drafting, and they're going to change the way they do their drafting. They hired a scout for Russia for like the first time in forever this year at the beginning of the year. Like, they don't really look at Europe as an option. They do and they don't. They're always looking for those college kids. I think they're going to get outside their comfort zone and see what happens. Are they going to try and make a splash at the free agency this year? I don't think so. I don't think they're going to go after the Brock Nelsons of the world. I think they're going to go after, I hope they're going to go after guys that can score goals and help bolster that back end. I think they're definitely going to go for a guy like Chychrun and something like that. I think they have no choice. You just traded Brandon Carlo. You have Lindholm that's coming off an injury that not many people come back from.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if he comes back, not many guys come back from that injury.
The Chychrun thing's interesting because you do have Lohrei here. You have Lindholm. You'll have Zadorov because you're not getting rid of Zadorov. I can't imagine that the team's just going to take that on. So you are kind of full on the left side.
You don't have Lindholm though. Like,
you don't think?
I don't think.
Interesting.
I don't think we're getting. Tell me how many guys have come back 100% after breaking their kneecap.
It's hard. It's real hard.
It's next to impossible. So you're probably right. They wouldn't move on Chychrun unless they know for certain. But I don't know, man. Lindholm was skating and now he's not skating. Like, there's weight. I am cautiously not optimistic about him ever playing again.
Ever again.
ever again in a Boston Bruins uniform.
Hampus Lindholm.
Yeah.
Wow.
He got broken kneecap, man.
I know. But he was going to come back. Like people thought he was coming back like a month ago.
People shouldn't have, because the rumors were true. Everybody kept saying it broken, and I kept looking it up. And then I talked to a friend who was a doctor who was like, yeah, that guy's done forever. I was like, what? He's like, yeah. Like, that's not the comeback. That's not the, that is not the Seabiscuit story, okay? The Kim Kardashian story. It's not one of those. It's
interesting.
I have my doubts. Hey, I could be proven wrong. I want him back. I think Lindholm was a fantastic defenseman.
He was the best player before he went down.
Agreed. And even if he does come back, he's going to be what, 50%? His knee is never going to be the same. And
I'm not a doctor.
He really needs that thing.
But yes, this is true. I'm not a doctor, but I do know that. However, he has had a lot of time to recover. So that's why
Gabriel Landeskog.
I know.
Hey, he's had 3 years to recover. Still hasn't happened.
And
they thought he would come back.
Gord, I hope you're wrong. I
hope I'm wrong too. But they're going to have to look. If you're going to, their priority should be someone that can play defense on the left side. That should be your your priority. Someone with a left shot defenseman, and I would say someone who can move the puck.
Oh, Chychrun fits every box of that. Does Washington not bring him back? Or you just outbid them?
I don't know. I can't answer that. Washington's playing way above their belt, their weight this year. So
they're playing way above their weight.
All I know is you need a left shot defenseman, and then you go from there, and you need some scoring. But we've said this every single year, and I know I spoke to you before the season. We were like, oh, they're going to finally go after Tyler Toffoli and someone like that. They didn't do that.
Nope.
They went the opposite of what they should do, and they need scoring. You can't expect to win hockey games if you have one guy that scores goals, and don't expect another season from Morgan Geekie like he gets, and they're about to give him a raise or let him walk.
Yes. Well, he's an RFA. So, I mean, I think
but if he's not going for what they want, they're going to trade him. So he's going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Sorry, my apologies. The way I phrased it, but
you're right.
I don't know, man.
Well, so my thing is, I think when you look at next season, I think the realistic expectation is they bolster the wings. Maybe not, a ton of guys, but like a Besser would be perfect. Like what they should do. I'm not saying what they're going to do, but what they should do for next season is you're not going to be able to go out and get a number one center.
Nope.
So you deal with what you got. You've got Zacha, you've got Patrnak, you've got Lindholm, you got Middlestat. Forgot about Middlestat. Pick two of those guys to be top six guys. And, do you put Middlestat on the wing? Do you put Zacha on the wing? And then you'll have Pastrnak. You'll hopefully have like a Besser, which would be really nice. And, does Hustatinov move up into that? Like, again, you want to have options, but that to me is your best path to being watchable. And
do you think Lysell makes the team?
I don't think he does.
He doesn't look good.
No, and I look, I don't watch a ton of Providence Bruins. Like, I can't, give a full in-depth thing on him, but the fact that they continuously don't bring him up.
I'll say this.
Which I'm not saying is the right thing either. I'm not saying that's the right thing.
I think the Boston Bruins in the last 5 years have been absolutely crap with regards to the development of the guys at Providence and bringing them up and down. I think they've been terrible at it. And what they've done to Patra this year is an absolute joke. At this point, it's an absolute joke.
I understood moving Patra to Providence when they did the first time, and they had him there for a while. That made sense. 100%. But I feel like they've just sort of been bringing him up and down since. And Merkulov not getting a longer look up here, that doesn't make sense to me. There's a guy. There's the guy who has done everything you wanted from him in Providence. He's produced for 3 years. Like, he has skill. And I don't look. His defensive game, you can say whatever you want about it, but this team needs some skill, needs some scoring. And again, he went pointless in the 3 games he was up here for. But I mean, this to me feels like the perfect time to bring him up and see what you got out of him, right?
I see. He's one that I'm like, I don't understand it, because that first time he came up, he plays great, and they send him down
immediately.
And we're just like, what are you doing? And it's like, he's not playing the way we want him to play. Well, guess what? You're not playing the way we want as fans to play. So like, stop saying that he ain't playing that way, because he's the only one out there doing anything. He was generating offense. He was pushing the puck forward. So then he probably got a message. You need to do this, this, and this with your game. Defense, 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 defense.
Yep.
Not every player can be two-way. And I think the Boston Bruins need to get that out of their damn head for the first time ever. You can have a couple guys that can be two-way. Hey, Lindholm is a two-way player.
Yep.
Fantastic at the faceoffs. He just doesn't score as much as he used to. You need some guys that can score goals. Hey, newsflash: Pastrnak is not a two-way player.
No. And credit to them for being okay with it when he was coming up.
They had him on with Marchand and Bergeron.
That's right.
Were they okay with it? I don't know about that, but they were also lucky, and I know this is going to go into the narrative, that Bruce Cassidy had them all in Providence before and knew what they could do. So he was like, I'm going to give them a chance.
Yep.
As much as the narrative was Bruce didn't like the kids, it was the total opposite. He just didn't like the kids that were whiny babies. That's all. That's all.
It's true. It's true.
It's just, this Boston Bruins franchise is so stubborn on what they say how you should play the game. But even when my dad played back in the 70s, they had guys that would just score goals, and they had guys that would punch people in the face. But they had people that all had roles. This year's team was just a bunch of the same guy.
Yep.
With Pastrnak.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Well, that's what it was. It was a bunch of Neanderthals out there, and they were just trying to punch people in the face all the time.
And I think the game is too fast now to sit. And this has happened in Nikita's, and I hate to pick on Nikita Zadorov a ton, but I've seen this with him a lot this year. People said, "Oh, he'll clear out the front of the net. He'll be fine. Yeah, he'll big guy. He'll clear out the front of the net." It doesn't happen like that anymore. Like, you need to be, if you're big, you also need to be a really good skater, and you need to be smart. And the IQ needs to be there in your own zone. And I think with him, sometimes you don't see that. And what game was it? It was, I think the Toronto game recently. And I talked about this a lot. Gets beat to the front of the net in the final minute and they score. Gets beat from the corner. I think it was by Nick Robertson. And it's like, that's
the little guy, water bug.
That's the perfect example of where hockey is now. Like, obviously, yes, Stanley Cup champs, the last however many, have had a bunch of big defensemen, but they all skate well. They're all smart. They're all good puck movers. Like, you can't just get big guys and be like, oh, we're going to be big and buff and tough. And that's just not how it works. You need good skaters. You need speed in your lineup. And you can have a Nikita Zadorov, but you also need to have good skating defensemen with him. And smart defensemen and good defensemen. And they just haven't had that this year. They have not had that at all.
Zadorov can't look left. He's got no blue steel. It's like he just can't look the other way, and it makes no sense. And I 100% agree with you. He is so bad about clearing people in front of the net. It's unbelievable. And the fact that the people complained about all the time, Brandon Carlo, he was really good at it.
I know.
He was really good at and so was McAvoy. So missing McAvoy, and now you have no Carlo, you have nobody that is able to move people in front of the net. And like Peak yesterday, like, Jesus, like, he looks so bad, so bad. And if you go back and look at every goal that Ottawa scored, they were able to claim the front of the net with ease.
Oh, yeah.
The rebound, the goal, everybody's like, oh, Swayman plays the puck bad, but he still stops the first shot. And I'll say this till a blue in their face.
Goal, right? The third or fourth.
Whatever.
It was shot from the point, and got behind.
He plays the puck behind the net improperly. He bobbles it, but at that point, his nerves are shot. And I was like, why didn't you take it? I thought they should have took him out after the second goal because I could see it in his face. He reminds me a lot of Tuukka Rask. You know when Rask would have the worst game, and you're just like, well, it's going to be a stinker because he wears his heart on his sleeve. Swayman does too. After that second goal, I was like, pull him. He's done. And they left him in. And I was like, okay, I don't understand. Why can we all see it and you don't see it? But when he misplays that puck behind the net, he figures it out. He makes the first save. That's the goalie's job. The goalie's job isn't to make a spectacular out of position save like Ullmark made on Lohrei that looked amazing, but still out of position to have to make that save. Their job is to make the first stop.
Yep.
The defenseman's job is to clear that rebound. Not one guy did it all game last. Ottawa was able to, if you notice, they started noticing it and they started taking all their shots from the point.
Yep.
Because
just going for rebounds.
Going for rebounds because they knew no one was going to take them in front of the net.
Yep.
There was no threat in front of the Bruins goalie to get that rebound. They shouldn't have scored that goal. It doesn't make any sense.
It got behind Peak. Peak just left him there.
He didn't even attempt to do anything. He went for the puck. That's defenseman should not. It's hockey 101. When you're doing a 2-on-1, don't look at the puck.
Oh yeah.
Look at the guy. Look at the player.
I was always taught when the puck goes high, you look low. It's like it's 101. Like, and this is the other thing, right, Court? Like, we talk about things they need to do for next season. Their right side on D is thin.
Yes.
Thin as hell. You have McAvoy, and then you've got a big old fall off, and then it's Peak, and if you bring back Yogi Haru, that's your right, and Ian Mitchell, that's your right side. Right?
Yogi Haru looked terrible yesterday.
Bad yesterday, and he looked great with Zadorov in the Florida games. So it was like, oh man. But that's another area where, like, you mentioned like the left side getting a guy like Chychrun, and I'm not up on if Chychrun.
Well, could Chychrun play the right?
He probably could. I mean, he probably could. I'd have to assume, like, it's not.
I'm just looking at he is the best defenseman available.
Correct. Yes.
And so my brain always goes, go for the best.
Yes. And I agree with you. And I just
the opposite of what the Bruins do in the draft.
I do wonder if they go for the guy on the right side. Speaking of free agency, one last thing before we head out.
Yep.
Marchand. That's a big thing this weekend. I don't think I've talked about it at all. But Marchand spoke in Florida. He spoke up here in Boston. I'm glad that they let him speak up here in Boston, even though he wasn't playing. I'm glad the Panthers kind of facilitated that. And there was a lot of things Marchand said. But one of the things that really caught my attention, and this is something, it's funny because when the Marchand trade rumors started happening, people would go, well, what if they traded him and then he came back in the offseason? And I said, that's really stupid. How does that make any sense? But then as time went on, I heard more and more hockey people, older hockey people too, kind of mention it as a legit idea. I had an NHL agent mention to me that idea. Not saying that he's connected to Marchand. He's not. But he mentioned that idea. And I said, wow, okay, maybe it could happen. And I don't have the quote in front of me. I'll try to find it as I scroll through here. But here was an interesting thing. Marchand's talking about, whether or not the Boston chapter has been closed for good. And he says, I don't know. I don't know what the future brings in terms of how it plays out in the summertime. And he starts to say, obviously, I would still love. And then he stops himself and he says, I think he said like, oh, I love the city.
Yes.
And I just wonder if he was about to say, obviously, I would still love to come back or love to be here, which I think he still would want to be here. I think that's
I agree.
implied.
I think it was a Freudian slur.
The idea, though, that gets put into play, like you would need him to not do anything the rest of the year. Like if you really wanted him back, which there's legit, let's just talk contractually. Cause I think it's weird to have him come back and give him the C again and reinsert him into that room. And like, I think that's odd. And I think they love him. I don't think that's, a problem, but it's just odd to do that.
But they did. There's precedent. It's happened before. St. Louis did it with Keith Tkachuk.
That's true. They did. But so I look at contractually, right? Like if they couldn't agree on something since last offseason with him, you would need him to fall off in the playoffs or do nothing, or like his injury to can't hamper him for him to come down. Because the report is what, like they offered him pretty much around the same salary.
6.3 and he asked for 7.5. Yep. And then he was willing to go in the middle and the Bruins said, we're offering you 6.3.
Yeah. And so you would need him.
For a 37-year-old that is going to retire at the end of the deal. 6.3 is still good, but
6.3 is very good.
He took a lot of deals leading up to it. He wanted to be paid for the future and the Bruins wanted to pay him. I mean, he wanted to be paid for the past and the Bruins wanted to pay him for the future.
Bingo. And that's another reason why I think team-friendly deals, I'm with you on this. Like
absolutely terrible.
It doesn't help you in the end. But in terms of whether or not he actually comes back, I think it's still fresh. The breakup is still fresh, right? When you have a breakup and right after you break up with the person, you're like, oh, maybe they weren't so bad, right? In that first like week after. And then as time moves along, you're like, oh, I'm good with that breakup. That's okay. I do wonder if Marchand's kind of facing that a little bit. Now, obviously, he has a family here. He has kids here. They love it here. They expected to be here forever.
That's why he chose Florida, because it was on the East Coast and it was easy to get back and forth.
Bingo.
Because he had two teams. We don't know who the second team was, but I'm pretty sure we can all guess who that second team was. But they were on the West Coast. It was too far.
Exactly. I think we know.
Yeah, it's 100% that team.
Yes.
Because that was like the rumors all day here in Canada. Like that leading up to before Elliot Friedman announces live on air and every Bruins fan goes, what the F? Like instantly, they were talking on Toronto radio that he was going to Vegas. Like it's interesting to have the two different takes because I went on Florida, I went on Twitter and I'm watching everybody, oh, you guys in Boston. I'm just like, is no one hearing this? Like they're pretty much saying Marchand's gone. It's over.
Yeah.
Like they talked about the meeting that happened. Everything was happening on Toronto radio. It was already out there and he was going to the Vegas Golden Knights.
And Vegas tweeted something like
I think
high at around like 250. And I was like, oh, he's going to Vegas. Easy.
I was right with you. And I think that he chose to go to Florida. And I applaud the Bruins for allowing that to happen. Because I really do think that's what happened. The
Oh,
Bruins
yeah.
allowed him to go there.
Yeah, I think they said that, we'll facilitate a trade because I think Sweeney said as much on Friday.
Well,
So
a specific team is what I'm saying. Like, he got to choose where he went.
yes. So do you think he comes back? And do you want him back?
I think he would come back. But I think I'm over the breakup and I'm okay that he's gone. Because I look at, and I know I'm going to get lambasted for this, and that's fine. I think he's great for this franchise. I think he is a surefire Hall of Famer. He's going to have his number hanging in the rafters. But it reminds me a lot of when Chara needed to hang them up after 2019 and decided to keep going. And then everybody goes after and they're like, well, blah, 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 blah. I think I don't know if Brad's got 3 years left in him. He can
Really?
He's going to be 40 at the end of that deal.
Well, that's the thing. And
dude, I am 45 years old. My body at around 39 just gave up. My back hurts all the time. He is in peak physical shape. He reminds me a lot of Chris Chelios. The way you look at that guy, and like I've seen him like when I was at the Bruins facility one time, he was in the gym, and I remember my wife like giving like the double take, and I'm like, calm down, because he
looks good.
Himself. Yeah, he looks good. I just, man, 3 years. Like, the only thing that doesn't matter to me, I'm like, well, $6.3 million is nothing. Like, everybody keeps talking about if the cap is going to do what it does in the next 3 years, as long as the money stays the same with the dollar working everything out for the NHL, 6.3 is nothing. No, it is literally nothing. So if he wants to come back, I don't say no. But if he doesn't come back, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I hate the return. I hate the return.
I do too. I'm in the same boat. I'm in the boat of, would it be nice to have him? Would it be a cool story for him to come back? Yeah, it would be awesome. Be a cool reunion. The tweet where the book is coming out from the front of his face, and
oh my god, that would be perfect, right?
Yeah, and like it would all set up perfectly, and you probably give him the C back, and he's ideally a second or third liner for you, and all that. But if it didn't happen, like if they use that money elsewhere, I'd be fine with it. Like,
or not even use it. You don't need to spend all the money.
I know. But you do need to bolster on the wings.
Yeah, so, you need to bolster on the wings. You need to bolster on the back end. If he's the best option available, and if you look at the free agent chart, I think Puckpedia put one out literally yesterday. He's in the top 20, but he isn't even in the top 10.
I know.
Of the best wingers available. I think Puckpedia put one out yesterday. They had like a list where you could go through. Like, Marner's number 1. Shocker, I know. But I think every forward's on there, because I think I saw Brock Nelson on there as well.
Marchand. So they did. I think this is by points per game.
Yes, that was the one.
And Marchand's 9.
Yeah.
So it goes Mitch Marner, Matt Duchene, Nikolai Ehlers. John
There's
Tavares.
my guy. That's who I want.
You want
Nikolai
Nikolai
Ehlers. Go
Ehlers.
Out and sign anybody, you're going out to get him. 1, he's younger than Marchand. 2, he plays exactly like him, except he doesn't get you penalties over and over again. But he still plays hard.
I know.
He doesn't go out there and bang bodies, but he has been a guy that's been playing for a team called the Winnipeg Jets, who no one watches on television, that is a very good hockey club, and no one knows what's going on. This guy's amazing. He broke in the league the same year as McDavid. He is a very, very good hockey player. That's the guy I'd go get. I wouldn't even think twice.
I think
Brock Besser and
numbers aren't great, but I agree with you. I think you need to make sure you have a watchable product in the regular season, and Ehlers helps that.
But look at Ehlers scores goals.
I know. No, I know. I'm not against it.
Is coming off an injury-plagued season, who was coming off a previously injury-plagued season. If I'm putting my GM cap on, and I'm only thinking as a GM and not a fan, I don't even bring him back at all.
Marchand, you mean?
Yeah, I don't bring him back.
Yeah, no, I that's why I'm in the same boat, where it's like, yeah, it's a cool story if he comes back. But at the same time, it's also, you're trying to build a faster, more skilled hockey team for the future. And you're trying to supplement that core, that Pastrnak and McAvoy and Swayman core as best you can. And I also think there's this other part court where it's like, this is a new era of Bruins hockey, and Marchand was the one remaining piece from that
2011
core. Yep, the 2011 core, and they had a lot of success. But it is time to turn the page. It is time to reignite that next wave. And I think Marchand's a good leader. I think he's a great player. He's an all-time Bruin. I'm with you. He's 63 in the rafters for sure. No one wears that number again. But if they don't bring him back, I'm not heartbroken over it. But if they did, it'd be a fun story. So there's like that.
I agree. And you've only got what, 3-4 years left of Pasta at what he's at. I don't think Patrnak is Alex Ovechkin. I just don't see that. Ovechkin, I don't know what drugs that guy's got in his body to keep him going. But I just look at Marchand's body and I look at the team and the direction. The trades they made and the players they brought in tell me that we're going to see a totally different Bruins at free agency. We're going to see a totally different Bruins at the draft this year. And if I'm wrong, then fire Don Sweeney, because I don't get it. You just showed me you brought speed and skill in. Every guy you brought in was speed and skill.
Yep.
You took a flyer on Casey Middlestat because he hasn't worked out anywhere. But I don't count Buffalo because no one works out there. And he goes to Colorado and he's brought in to be the second line center, but he's not going to get the ice time because Cal McCarr and Nate McKinnon don't get off the ice.
Correct.
So getting ice time in Boston, maybe he can do something.
I'm with you. No, I like the direction. I like the direction they are charting in post deadline. I like that. And if they continue doing that, I will like those moves unless they.
I agree. You said earlier that it's exciting. It's exciting to watch the game again. They lost and they looked terrible last night. I still watched the game.
I still watched the whole thing.
And there's been games this year where I've turned it off in the second period. I'm like, I'm done. I don't care. This is just terrible.
Boring product. I agree with you.
Yeah, it looked like the New Jersey Devils from the 90s. I just didn't care anymore.
Just less winning.
Yeah.
Court, this has been great.
Thank you.
This is always fun. Where can people check out your stuff and follow along?
You can find me on Bruins Diehards on my YouTube channel, and you can find me on Twitter at Court Lalonde. That's it. I don't do much. I
like that. That's perfect. Well, Court, this is fun. We'll have to make this a more regular thing as time goes along. We'll do some off-season stuff, I assume, and this has been fun. Thanks so much, Court.
Thanks for having me.
And that's been Bruins Beat. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.